If you take a look at the Libertarian, they always talk about Jill Stein. Jill Stein took, what, 0.5%? They talk about Jill Stein. Well, I have a Libertarian. I'm somewhat Libertarian. I have to be honest with you. Rand Paul will tell you that. I have a Libertarian candidate on last time that got, what, 4.5% or so. Those are all Republican voters. They're wasting their vote because they have to vote for us.
But this time, the popular vote would be a huge message to the country.
If there wasn't a Libertarian on the ticket, I would win the popular vote. I would have won it last time.
Hey.
Hey.
Am I interrupting something important?
Impossible. I work for the government.
Rick Jensen on 1150 AM, 1017 FM, WDEL.
All right, it is producer Randy filling in today for Rick. Rick will be back tomorrow. And if you're wondering, why did he play Trump talking about...
I'm kind of libertarian myself.
I'm sure Rand Paul was thrilled.
Ask Rand Paul. I'm very libertarian.
But, hey, I will say, that is the first time I've ever heard a president mention the word libertarianism at all, in any way, shape, or form. So I just find that interesting. And then, of course, the great Ron Swanson, a libertarian character in a hit TV show. So there you go. And without further ado, we have on the program here Dave Casey, who is the Newcastle County Libertarian Chair. Let's get Dave on the air. Hey, Dave, how are you? Thanks for calling the show.
What's up, Randy? How you doing, man? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing well, and it's a pleasure to have you on. I'm always anxious to do anything to promote libertarianism and so forth. And I don't know if while you're on hold you hear the commercials and any of the wacky bits I play, but
yes.
You heard the Trump thing where Trump says,
I did.
Okay. And I think that's rather significant that he brought that up. I guess that's when Gary Johnson was running.
Mm-hmm.
And he said,
Joe Jorgensen.
I think that clip was when it was the 4.5%.
16. Okay.
Yeah,
gotcha.
that was Gary Johnson and Bill Weld, who I don't know how I feel about Bill Weld unless he had a major change of heart. But anyway,
I'm with you.
Yeah, I've always kind of heard he's kind of not libertarian. But I don't know. The party sometimes gets caught up in the big names. I thought Joe Jorgensen was a strong candidate. I'm libertarian wise.
Mm-hmm.
But and then I've met the who's the other guy? I can't think of his name at the moment. It was in 2004. Badnarik. Yeah, I met him in person.
Probably the last great candidate, in my opinion, that the party had.
There was someone running one year. I think her name's Christine Smith, and she said she didn't get the nomination, but she said, I'm paraphrasing. She said, if I get the nomination, and this was 2008. She said, if Ron Paul gets the Republican nomination, I'm going to tell everyone not to vote for me, vote for Ron Paul. And I was like, wow. You're awesome.
Yeah, that's huge. That's bold. And I don't know how the rest of the party would have looked at that at the time. That was before my time. But right off the bat, I'm a Ron Paul guy. So I probably would have been in that camp, too. That's where the energy was at that time, for sure.
Yeah, I wanted her more. As soon as I heard her say that, I was like, wow, you the best. I mean, I don't know if that is that an obvious thing for a libertarian to say? I hope so. I hope a libertarian would say that.
Yeah. I mean, if you're talking about libertarianism in the past 100 years, to most people, it's Ron Paul and Ayn Rand.
Yeah.
Other than that, you're talking to people who probably they don't even know the names and things. So yeah, that's where everybody should have been.
Didn't who's the guy? Nicholas Sarwark? Is that
yes?
Pronounced? He on I think it was June 2nd. He posted something on Twitter, and it was an anti Ron Paul thing. I'm like, dude. What are you doing? Why would you? How could you say something negative about Ron Paul? And I know it was about Ron Paul's an older guy, and it was a quote from the Ron Paul newsletters, which weren't all written by him. It's not like Oprah has her own channel; she doesn't act in every every second of
Right.
every show.
Right.
You know, the guy, there's not a guy named Bob Time that writes every article in Time magazine. You know, I mean, so you have contributors, and somebody wrote something, and Ron Paul said, "Yeah, I didn't write that, so move on." And then, you know, they do a trick with Ron Paul. They keep asking him the same question, expecting a different answer. Like, "Did you write those racist things? Did you write that homophobic?" And he's like, "No, I didn't. Can we move on?" And then they just keep asking him again and again and again. So anyway,
this is where discourse has devolved to. It's just that you can't win the argument. So, well, that person's a racist, or they did this, or whatever. But yeah, they're talking about newsletters going back to like 1992 or 1994. And Nicholas Sarwark, for your listeners who do not know, he was the Libertarian National Committee chairman for 6 years. 2014 to 2020. And yes, he was a huge part of my inspiration for getting involved with the party when I was alerted to the fact that the head of the Libertarian Party was not only, bashing Ron Paul vocally, but other great libertarians like Tom Woods and Jeff Deist of the Mises Institute. So yeah, this was I was not aware that these people were in command of the ship. So that's when I kind of started paying attention to the party and how it wasn't paying attention to the movement.
The quote that Ron Paul said was something about, okay, wait, see, now I just fell for it. The quote that was attributed to Ron Paul, but Ron Paul says he didn't say it, and I believe him. It really wasn't even that medically untrue. It said, it was like, I'm paraphrasing again, it was like, I liked when gays were in the closet, they were less promiscuous. And so take the word gay out of it. I mean, like, anyone being less promiscuous is going to get less STDs. I mean, you want to not get one, be with one person, be in a monogamous relationship. So it wasn't even medically incorrect what he said. But, I mean, if you dig something up from a long time ago, and I guess you can try to brand someone as homophobic or whatever, and I think the guy is not homophobic or you know, or racist at all.
Ron Paul detests. Well, he's a conservative, but he detests racism and detests forms of collectivism of any kind. So yeah, I would reject that. I reject that notion wholeheartedly that he had anything to do with it. I believe him because he's never given me any other reason to distrust him. So yeah, I'm with you. Even if it was something off color that came out, I have an idea who did write that. We've talked about it in our circles a bit. And hey, man, it's messed up. You know, people say messed up things, but that's not going to – it should not derail the Ron Paul revolution. It was very real and very true. So
yeah, I've never been more excited about a candidate in my life. I mean, just to me, Ron Paul is just – he's godlike.
That's good to hear, Randy. Now I know where you stand on so many issues already. So that's a beautiful thing, man. Yeah, I'm with you, dude. That guy changed my whole life. I came from the left. I came into my political awakening when George Bush was president, so I just assumed – that all of the awfulness was coming out of the right because it was at the time that I was, 18, 19, 20 years old. And, so I was kind of hesitant in the beginning when a Texan conservative Christian pro-life guy had what I was like, oh man, I had never heard of the Federal Reserve before. That really clicked with me when he started making those, giving you the explanations as to why things might suck in the world. I didn't understand monetary policy until Ron Paul. I just wasn't fascinated with that, and he kind of brought those things into focus. And
I hadn't heard of him, and I was this was probably it was right when it's got to be around 2003, I'm going to guess, when Janet Jackson showed her nipple on for a half a second on the football game, the big what's that dopey thing, the Super Bowl. Yeah, I don't watch sports.
Me either, buddy.
We're like two peas in a pod. But so I was watching the Puppy Bowl, and then I tuned over because I was curious, because they always make a big deal about the halftime show. So I'm watching on my big fancy 51-inch TV and with the big back on it. And and I go, did I just see her? And so then I was just started working at another radio station, so Congress got together and like, we need to raise the fines for indecency in broadcasting. So I was working at a real small station, and we were talking about and the host, I was his like sidekick at the time, and the host says, yeah, everyone who voted, every Republican voted to raise the fines except one. And a huge majority of Democrats also did, maybe 30. This is how 535 people. Well, the Senate was just unanimous. So out of the 435 members of the House of Representatives, there was about 30, I'm just guessing. I mean, you can look it up. But 30 Democrats who voted no on increasing the fines and one Republican. So that day, I'm like, oh, my God, who's this one Republican? Then I found out it was Ron Paul. And I've interviewed Ron Paul, and I told this story to him. He's like, well, you understand the First Amendment. And having Ron Paul tell me that I understand the First Amendment, it's like, well,
that's nice.
I've lived. I could go. Man. You can take me now because I've lived. So
I'm jealous. Great.
So tell me a little more about yourself. How did you get? This is an elected position? I'm assuming, or am I?
Yeah, it was an elected position. However, it was uncontested, and a few people voted no to. So they would have rather see nobody than me, but the majority did not feel that way. So yeah, this is going to be my gig for the next couple of years.
Awesome.
I have a great team, many of which came out of the Mises Caucus of the Libertarian Party, which is tasked with bringing the Ron Paul revolution into the Libertarian Party.
Excellent.
So that's where kind of the rubber meets the road. Some people in the Libertarian Party, Delaware and all the other states, are not thrilled about this. We've been called the MAGA caucus, and worse, a lot worse than that, as I'm sure you can imagine. But this is just simply not the case, man. I've never voted for a Republican president in my life. When I do vote, I'm usually all over the place. Libertarian, maybe an independent, or it could be, I was a registered Democrat in Delaware until this gig, because I figured that we are entrenched here with Democratic corruption, and the only way to shift that at all is to participate in the primaries. So, as Ron Paul has said, the freedom philosophy should infiltrate all the parties, Democrat, Republican, and the Libertarian Party. So here I was trying to get Tulsi Gabbard on to be the nominee for the Democratic ticket. As much of a fool's errand as that is, we only have our vote. But that was the best one that they offered. And Ron Paul was the best that the Republicans offered in 2008 and 2012. So I try to stick with my principles and not let the cathedral or the establishment move me along.
I publicly endorsed Tulsi Gabbard on this show. I bought a Tulsi Gabbard T-shirt. I know economically she's not a libertarian. I get that. But it is an economic issue when we're talking anti-war, and she's a major in the army.
Yes.
I mean, you got all these other guys.
There.
Yeah, and Ron Paul said some really nice things about her. And that's how I learned her name, and I was super into her. I did get mad at one point when she endorsed Biden, but then I read later that she had to sign something saying that she would, by running, she has to sign saying she'll endorse whoever's elected. So I think she just went through the motions and said, okay, here's my obligation. Maybe Ron Paul didn't sign that because he didn't endorse McCain.
This is why Ron Paul is better than anybody else. Even Rand Paul endorsed Mitt Romney when he ran against his dad.
I know.
I mean, this is why Rand Paul can simultaneously be the best member of the Senate we've ever had and be not even close to his father. Like, both of those things can be true at the same time.
Now, I've heard that the other Paul's son, Rand's brother, I think it's Ron Jr., said that Rand and Ron are trying to get to the same place, but they're taking a different route. So I like to hope in my fantasy world that if Rand ever did become president, he would pull off this Republican, libertarian-leaning mask that he wears and go, ha, 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 I fooled you all. I'm exactly like my father. I mean, how could you grow up in that house and not be exactly like him?
That's a great point, man. We have a caucus, actually, they just dissolved within our party, called the Pragmatist Caucus of the Libertarian Party. So their basic premise is, and I'm paraphrasing here, but, hey, guys, we're as radical as you are, but we can't show that to the public because they'll never buy it like that. We have to, through incrementalism, sell the libertarian philosophy. So in my opinion, real libertarian pragmatism would be voting for a guy like Rand Paul. Like, you're not going to, or Tulsi Gabbard, you're not going to get everything that you want.
Yeah.
But hey, maybe over time we might get to this point and we might get, something along the line. But I will say, and this is why I'm in the party that I am in, I don't believe without, like, we have to move the Overton window back so hard in the direction of freedom that's why the Libertarian Party has to be unapologetically radical and libertarian. You can't hide it because we need to make better better Republicans and better Democrats. We need to rub off on them. Bring the Democrats back to, the party of peace, free speech and Fourth Amendment rights. And we need to, make sure the Republicans remember what conservative values are. Don't spend yourself into oblivion. Don't fight in useless wars and don't serve the corporate machine. So they all need reminders. I've heard Ron Paul say, hey, I love that word progressive. I want to be progressive. They steal these words and, we need to take some of them back, and that's why we need to hold on to the word libertarian in the Libertarian Party. And that's where our work starts.
You are totally. It's like you're reading my mind. I mean, because people will ask me, "Well, why would you waste your vote and vote for Libertarian?" I'm like, I want to influence, the other two parties to be more libertarian. I mean, like, send me somebody, like if Thomas Massey ran, I wouldn't vote for the Libertarian because he almost is a libertarian in my mind. But, if it's Romney, then I wouldn't be like, he's great too. No, he's not.
Right.
He's awful.
I've made this argument that at least within the party, and I said this as an elected, officer in the party, that, hey, maybe we should be, and it's not up to me, but maybe we should be strategic in who we run campaigns against. I mean, campaigns cost money, and you better have a great argument. So, like the first place I would not run a campaign and spend a lot of money is maybe in Florida with a libertarian gubernatorial candidate. Like maybe make the case that, like, I don't know, that guy's not the worst governor that we have in the country right now.
DeSantis?
So we could probably spend this money in other places and make more of an impact. And then when we get the other 49 governors to switch and be libertarians, then, we'll get down to him. But, we should be more strategic about that for sure.
Yeah, how many libertarians have their Florida gun permits signed by DeSantis? You know what I mean?
Right, yeah. And lots of libertarians, lowercase L libertarians would make that argument. They don't want to mess with the party. And to be honest, because of its history, I understand. And a lot of voters, they have a very high time preference. So they want it by 2024, we got to get this country back on track. Like, this is just an unrealistic goal. So I'm putting in, and, these people that are working with me we know what we're up against. The progressive era has gone on for 100 years. We need to start doing some undoing of that. And it's going to take a while. That's the truth of the matter.
Hey, I don't have a call screener, but if someone calls in, would you be willing to talk to them? Somebody was trying to, but I didn't want to interrupt you.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
All right, so I may just bark over you and say, we got so-and-so on the line, if that person, if anybody calls back. So just be forewarned. All right.
For any of your listeners that are Republicans, I will say as a libertarian, I'm probably more conservative than you, and any of your Democratic listeners, I am probably more progressive than you. I'll debate anybody on that.
I'm uber fiscally conservative. I'm against public schools. I don't want public schools because actually here comes a phone call. I'm going to put this guy right on as I recognize his name on the caller ID. Greg, you're live on the air. You're on with Dave Casey.
Hey, good morning. How you doing? Oh, good afternoon. Sorry.
That's quite all right. Good evening.
Hey, how you doing? I really like the guest. I do follow the Libertarians. I'm not one, although I was a huge Ron Paul supporter. And the biggest thing that I picked up from what he said today is you're always edging the two parties a little bit more in the direction of, libertarianism, conservatism, self-government, all that sort of thing. The question I have is, what does the Libertarian Party do, or is there anything within their platform to return spending, government spending, to the states? I just hate that the Fed does just about everything, and then they mandate what the states have to do, and they take our money and then feed it back to the states, thereby, having their hand in all the decisions instead of it being made at a state level. Right.
Dave, do you have an answer?
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I wanted you to answer.
That's it? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll say this. there's a couple buzzwords and phrases that every single libertarian you'll ever talk to, capital L or lowercase l, will tell you that the name of the game for the people, capital T, capital P, is to decentralize everything. The state is always trying to centralize everything. That's a due north for them. The other is taxation is theft. And I mean that full stop, 100%. So the federal government has literally no right, no authority to tax anything. This is, again, they've done this through incrementalism, mostly after 1913 and the Federal Reserve Act and the IRS. But this is an act of aggression. So whether it's it doesn't matter what agency, but if the federal government is taking money from anyone to redistribute it to anyone, that's an act of aggression, and the Libertarian Party is against that.
Yeah,
short and skinny.
Yeah, the one thing I wish the Libertarians would do, I think they would get a lot more people like me, but maybe it's just part of who they are, and if that's the way it is, that's the way it is. But they don't seem to, other than theft, they don't seem to have a strong moral component to their party. And they are against theft, I'll agree with that, which is immoral. But as far as a lot of other things, they're too, and you probably hear this all the time, but that's why I never became a libertarian.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I definitely hear that. So I'm trying to make it easier, at least in Newcastle County. I think that it's a big ask to ask anyone who wants to be involved with the party or be a member, even a voting member, to change their party affiliation. Because I think that those cultural divides are generational. If you grew up in a conservative household, that's likely to play a big part in the way that you look at the world, and the same for a liberal household. So this is a political organization. It's a legal philosophy that the party is based on, and that's based on the principle of non-aggression. I do not have the right to aggress on any peaceful person, period, full stop. My right to swing my fist stops at your face.
Hey, Dave, can you hold on? Can you hold on through the break?
Yes.
I have to break for news and stuff. I'm running behind. Do you want to hold on too, Greg?
Yeah, I can hold on. Thank you.
I'm just going to pan your fader down. You'll still be able to talk to each other, I think, if I understand the phone system. I'm just going to fade you down to 0, and I'm going to play the spots. We'll be back with more of it right after this.
Hang on. More with Rick Jensen is just ahead on 1150 AM, 101.7 FM, WDEL. Rick Jensen on 1150 AM, 101.7 FM, WDEL.
All righty, yes, it's the Rick Jensen Show. Final segment here. Randy Dascher, producer Randy, filling in today for Rick. Rick will be back tomorrow. On the line, we have Dave Casey, who is the chair of the Newcastle County Libertarian Party. And also Greg is on the line. Greg calls the show quite often, and they've been holding on for a while. So let's get back to them. Hello, gentlemen. Thank you for holding.
You're welcome, Randy.
Thank you. What was that? I didn't hear it.
Oh, I say you're welcome. Can you hear me all right?
Oh, yes.
Okay, good.
Excellent. All right, guys. So when we last left you, we were discussing, I don't know, we were having a pretty in-depth philosophical conversation, libertarianism, conservatism, and so forth. Were you guys talking during the break? Because I didn't.
We were arm wrestling. I had him in the kung fu grip to the forehead, and then he did a reverse. No, yeah, we were debating off air. Yes.
I wasn't sure because I can. There's a hold button, but there's a way to lock the phones in, and I'm like, you know what? I'll just turn you guys down. You can chat while you're waiting through the spots.
It was great.
Okay, good. Did you hear the commercials through the breaks?
No. In fact, I was going to turn the radio on to see where we were at.
Yeah, you probably.
But no.
Is he coming back? No, I got a little behind on commercials. Sorry about that. So, yes. Okay, let's get back into more of it here. And I can ask both of you guys about this kind of thing. Something I'm curious about, and I want to know the libertarian feel. And I feel like you're about as libertarian as it gets there, Dave.
Thanks.
When it comes to a mandatory voter ID, does the Libertarian Party have a view on that, or is that kind of just each individual person thinks their own way?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that anything with the word mandatory in it, the Libertarian Party is probably against that. Yes, vote. Though I'm sure people have individual opinions about, because we do live in a state that's not a libertarian paradise. So, sometimes you got to make concessions. But I would say that 9 out of 10 or even more libertarians would say anything mandatory is not good ideas don't require force. So, yeah, nothing mandatory.
Now, what about, would you think it would cut back on the amount of voter fraud? My angle would be I think the punishment for being truly caught committing voter fraud should be rather extreme. I don't mean jail time, but I mean like picking up trash on the streets and eating nothing but russet potatoes and water for 75 hours a week. Just a deterrent to stop you from voting more than one time.
Randy, this is my problem with the libertarians. It's such a religion to them, like, oh, I can't have stuff mandatory. Of course you have to have stuff that's mandatory. All sorts of things have to be mandatory.
What kinds of sorts of things?
You can't murder somebody. You can't steal their stuff.
We covered that with the non-aggression principle, and that's just it's full stop. So of course, are you
anti-abortion? That's aggression.
Okay. Listen, that again, this is why our party is better than the other two parties, because even though it's harder, we have pro-life and pro-choice people because there's a freedom argument to be had on both sides. That's just the truth about it. But it's stupid.
You have to make a choice. By saying there's a freedom on both sides, you haven't made a decision.
No,
why do you not have a freedom on both sides on stealing and killing?
Listen, I think that I did cover that. But again, the non-aggression principle doesn't allow you to murder somebody. It doesn't allow you to rape people or steal from them or coerce them. Okay, so that's covered. Other than that, though, like during the break, you were saying that somebody shouldn't be allowed to do certain drugs. They shouldn't be allowed to have pot plants in their garden unless it was to make rope. So you're making arbitrary lines here to what the state is allowed to do, what they are allowed to enact force on because of some reason you have.
No, absolutely. The state has to draw lines. I mean, the only reason we have
that's a fundamental disagreement. I want to make that clear. That is the conservative argument and the liberal argument that if we just had the right people in power, then everything would be just fine. And your argument on both sides is flawed. The state is flawed. The system is corrupt at its core. It was designed to be like this. So going back to the voting issue, do I think that if we're focused on getting people to not be able to vote twice, then you're forgetting about the millions of votes that can be evaporated in a second via, some of these Diebold machines. We've known about this for 15, 20 years. They can steal an election. All elections are unfair.
I've worked the election probably 8 times for the state, and so I think I know a lot about it. Yes, we should have a paper backup ballot. You should get a serial number or something that later on, if there's an audit, everybody can bring their serial number in and say, yep, this validates my vote. I'm 100% for fair elections, but in fact, I think it should be somewhat difficult to vote.
Everyone is for fair elections. The disconnect here is, can you have one? I don't think you can have. No, you cannot. And I don't think that you could have one probably in your whole lifetime.
Make it really simple. Everybody has a Social Security number. You have to have your Social Security number.
I'm not saying there's not a way to do it. I'm saying that the power structure won't allow you to do it that way because they're not interested in the public good. If there is
I agree. I mean, let's just agree that there's primarily bad people in government right now. Can we agree on that? Okay.
Yes.
So now what we're trying to figure out is how to get good people in government. Can we agree on that?
Right now, I'm trying to change the culture. That's what I'm trying to do personally. And someday, yes, I would like to see from the bottom up, the local level, city councils, mayorships, dog catcher, city school board. I'd like to see libertarian-leaning people come into those positions. But we have a long way to go for that.
Hey, have you ever heard the Free State Project up in New Hampshire?
I brought that up.
That was on the Greg and Dave show during the commercial.
It was awesome.
Oh, was it? Yeah, no, I was telling Dave that I have a very good friends that moved to Keene, New Hampshire about, 8 years ago. They were big Ron Paulers. That's where I met. In fact, she was the head of the Delaware Ron Paul group. And I listened to Free Talk Live quite a bit. I don't know if you ever listened to it, Randy. It's a radio program.
I have.
And what's that?
I have not, but I did interview Jason Sorens from the Free State Project here on this station, and I'm really tempted to move there, but I have a radio gig here, so there's no way I'm leaving till I'm forced out of here.
And that's where, although let's say right now I think the Catholic Church is corrupt, but I don't think that the Ten Commandments are wrong, and so on and so on. So the same thing, my issue with libertarians is perhaps they would be a tool to reset the government, but the original government was a very good government, just that the bats got into the belfry and the country became corrupted, as do all countries. And so the solution is more decent people. More decent people would vote in more decent people. And that's really the solution. And I don't think you have to go libertarian. And when I listen to Free Talk Live, which is by far the biggest libertarian show, 70% of what they say on there, I do not agree with. Although I do agree with the freedom and that the government should do less, but I do think that the government has to have a moral component, and you can't just step aside and say there's no morality other than personal freedom.
All right. Well, let's agree to disagree on that for now. I want to let Dave get out some of his since he just became the chair of the Newcastle Libertarian Party. I want to learn some more local things and what he's interested in doing for the local Newcastle world. And is there ways that we can get libertarians or liberty-minded people on the ballots? I think a school board member as a libertarian would probably affect your life more than, pretty much more than anyone else, because that's, for me in Pennsylvania, that's my biggest bill is my school taxes. Now, I don't know that one libertarian could change it, but I think you could get your name in the paper a lot for being the like Dr. No, where you're Ron Paul, you're voting no on everything, and Thomas Massey does that too. I think Massey's closer to the new Ron Paul than, dare I say, Rand, but
he's the best one we have in Congress.
I agree.
Yep.
So
I'm with you.
Is there ways that people can, if they're interested in local libertarianism, is there ways to reach you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
If you're in Newcastle County, go on Facebook. Just type in Newcastle County Libertarian Party of Delaware. There's a chapter in each county, so you can get involved. Let me think. Yeah, we're trying at this point, man. I'm trying to just meet our neighbors, and like Ron Paul said, we need young people and we need music. So we're trying to have some parties. We're throwing a barbecue this coming Saturday, the 17th. At Wheelie's Farm Stand Cafe in Newcastle, across from the Amazon factory there, or the Amazon Fulfillment Center.
Yeah, I was there. I introduced Joe Jorgensen.
Nice. Okay, yeah, that's my place. I'm the owner there.
Oh, what a small world. That is a really nice place. I felt so at home there. I mean, just liberty-minded, friendly people. I mean, you could leave your windows down and your car unlocked, and nobody's going to steal anything.
And it's so apparent when you feel it, right? It's like, wait a second. It's something you usually only get on the internet or maybe on a show like this. Yeah. And when you meet your people in the real world, something becomes apparent. And that is, oh, wait, it's not just me. There's a lot of people out here who feel like this. So it's about, you know what the left has done better than anyone for the past 100 years? They organize. In fact, Barack Obama was a community organizer. So that's what they do. They get in early and they, quote, educate the public, right? This is what we need to do, but on the side of liberty. You need to talk to people about this. You know, human freedom, if you ask 10 people, do you want humans to be free? 10 out of 10 are going to go, yeah. Of course I do. What a silly question. So from there, though, things get lost in the sauce. But it should always come back to that. Like, are we on the right path? Are we not? What are the mistakes we've made? How do we correct some of these? And I don't need to be, like our party has already reached out to conservatives and liberals. We work with gun groups, the conservatives, Republicans, like on Second Amendment issues, like the Women's Defense Coalition and Delaware gun rights. These guys are great, and we see eye to eye on this issue. So no one has to concede anything. So I hope, Greg, if you're out there, man, we can, where we see eye to eye, we can work together. Where we don't, it's all good. I'll be here in my libertarian camp. You can stay where it makes you feel comfortable. We're also working with our brethren on the left for cannabis decrim and things like that, psilocybin and psychedelic movement. These things are picking up steam, and this all has to do, again, I'm sure Greg would not help me decriminalize mushrooms, but he should, because they grow out of the earth, and if you eat one, you have not aggressed on anyone. So you should not be thrown in a cage for that. Should be. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Finish your thought.
I just mean that this is the non-aggression principle. Have I hurt anyone? No, I have not. Have I? So that's what you should ask yourself. What are you willing to throw somebody in a cage for?
I think that cage should be a special place for rapists and murderers and people who harm other people, who hurt and harm and physically, intentionally harm others. Yes.
That's it. But you could find yourself, if you jaywalk and you get a $50 ticket and you don't pay it, next month that turns into $100. In 6 months it turns into $500. Then the constable comes up, and if you don't want to get put in the cage, he might kill you. That's the end result of that line. So I know that people might say that doesn't happen. Well, yeah, it does. It does happen. And it might not be just for jaywalking, but all kinds of, did you speed? Did you go 10 mile an hour over the speed limit? Well, you didn't hurt anybody.
Yeah, people ask me when I say all victimless crimes should be legalized. I'm for legalizing all drugs. And a lot of people their vision gets cloudy, and they go, yeah, but then they're going to break in houses and steal your TV to buy heroin. And it's like, well, no, that would still be illegal. The part about breaking in the house, Right. But if you want to go paint cars all week and Friday night you want to get an 8-ball of Coke, why would I care? As long as you're not breaking in my house and stealing my TV, I don't care. I don't want to pay to have you locked up in a cage because you bought the 8-ball of Coke or whatever. You know what I mean? So it's just, you can't cloud your judgment by other things. And like another example, I always came up with the shortage of three things: prostitution, and then people go, well, what about human trafficking? And it's like, well, don't even go there. I'm talking about an adult-free prostitute. If a girl wants to say for $50 you can blah, blah, blah. Where's the crime in that? I mean, do you think every guy who's that big Hollywood, the big Playboy guy, Hugh Hefner, you think all those 18-year-old girls were in love with him? It was about being around all that money. So that's essentially, every time you see a rich, old, ugly, fat guy and some gorgeous young wife, that's usually essentially prostitution, but it's legal because they married it.
There's a power dynamic there at play. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a reason, too, that this exists. And this is a good time to talk about what the free market is. Like, lots of conservatives like to use that term, the free market. Let me tell you something, man. The only free market is the black market. That's it. If you want to open up, I own Wheelie's Farm Stand Cafe. I started that company on a bike cart trying to make coffee on the street. Water plus beans equals coffee. Do you know that it didn't take a hot second for the state to jump in and tell me 1,000 hoops that I needed to jump through and all kinds of arbitrary laws before I served anyone a cup of coffee or a glass of lemonade?
Wow.
You can't begin to imagine the human progress that has been stifled and destroyed by the state. I make no mistakes. This is Murray Rothbard said, do you hate the state? Like, that's the difference, I think, between conservatives and libertarians. I hate the state. Some people want to reform it, whatever. I do not see that really as a possibility. I'm trying to I don't want to burn it down either. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's incapable of doing these things with, quote unquote, the right people, or that's just not the way that it's going to shake out. So we need to lose faith in our institutions, lose faith in our elected officials. If you're a Republican in Delaware, don't wait till 2024 to see who they prop up on a podium in front of you. Because guess what? There's money in losing, everybody. That's a shill bidder, and they're there for a jobs program. They don't have any hope of winning anything in Delaware. You've got to change the culture, and we got a lot of work ahead of us.
Well, you are a breath of fresh air, and wow, you're a strong libertarian candidate, and that's what we need. And I love that you love Ron Paul, and you even man, we're like, if I run into you and I go, I'm looking in a mirror, maybe we were separated. Of course,
Randy,
I'm way older though.
Come into Wheelie's and we'll have some chicken and waffles and coffee and just bro down and talk about it.
I can eat some waffles. I'm a vegetarian. And I make a point on the show, a little ongoing bit that we do. We go, it's been 10 minutes since Randy told everyone he's a vegetarian. But I don't force it down anybody's throat. I watched a movie. It's What the Health. And it was really good. And ever since that day, I've been a vegetarian. But I don't go around saying the state should mandate it or anything. And one other example of a victimless crime. You're driving down the road at 2 o'clock in the morning, and the green light turns red just because it's tired of being green, and you stop, and you look to the left 7 miles down the road, you see nothing. You look to the right 7 miles down the road, you see nothing, and you go through that light. Was there a victim when you went through it? I don't think so. So there's another example other than gambling, prostitution, drugs. I have to wrap up the show here shortly. Dave, I'd like to make it so that you are our libertarian authority on all things libertarianism. Anytime Rick and I have a question,
honored.
That would be awesome. Cool. The phone number that I have is cool to call you in the future on, or is this a work number?
Anytime, man. Yeah,
okay.
It's my personal number.
Awesome. Well, damn. Any final thoughts that you want to get out? Because I have to be out at exactly 1:55 in about 50 seconds.
Yeah, let me just say, man, that if you are interested in anything we talked about today, reach out, get involved somehow. This is the key to life, is not being a spectator. Don't sit back and watch people do stuff. Get out in the streets, mix it up with your people. We have a unique opportunity in Delaware. We only have 3 counties. We've got a red one, a blue one, and a purple one. Everybody likes freedom. Everybody. It's just not popular right now because they've gotten into the culture too deeply. But we can change that locally. We don't have to change the world. Let's change Delaware.
Thank you, Dave Casey. I want to thank Amy Lepore for hooking us up together. So thank you so much, sir. And
thank you.
Looking forward to having you on the show in the future. Have a great day. Take care.
You too, Renee. Thanks, buddy.
Bye. All right, fantastic. Well, that was quite a fun interview. All right, Rick will be back tomorrow. Stay tuned for Delaware's Afternoon News with Chris Carl.
Everything really wrapped up nicely.
I'm going to throw you now to Weenie in the Butt in the afternoon.